This lesson on beef breeds is for the Introduction to Ag class at Plateau Valley School. Because this is an introductory class, we'll just look at a little bit of vocabulary around beef breeds and a few of the most common breeds in our area. We know that we can divide most of the current breeds of cattle into two categories of British breeds and continental breeds. And most of the British breeds came from an origin in the British Isles, later part of the 1700s. In those areas, there was a lot of livestock breeding that happened. Some of the breeds that emerged were the Shorthorn, the Hereford, and the Angus. They became pretty pivotal in the creation of other breeds. There's another set of cattle breeds that came from the larger area of Europe. Some people call them the European exotics or the continental breeds. They weren't introduced into the United States from Europe until the late 60s and early 70s, and they include some breeds like Simmental, Limousin, Keenania, Menanjou, and Charolais. We know that some breeds of cattle are best for meat and some are better for milk production. Additionally, we have the dairy breeds, which are focused on milk production. But we have another class of cattle that we call the dual-purpose breeds. And these are breeds that throughout history have had equally high milk quality and meat traits. And that makes them pretty valuable to people who are looking for a multi-purpose animal, maybe one that is going to be milked, but also have calves raised for high-quality protein. We also want to recognize the influence of the Zebu breeds of cattle as they've become part of other breeds. These breeds originated in India, and they're especially well equipped for the hot temperatures and the increase in pests like flies and things like that. You can see that they have big ears and a droopy dewlap and the hump on the back, which all help with preserving water and preventing dehydration. They were often crossed with existing breeds to form some new ones. So if we think about those Bos taurus breeds from northern Europe and then the Bos indicus breeds from the southern ends of Europe that had the humps, when those were crossed, they then made additional breeds. So we know that the Brahman breed comes from a cross of a Zebu and any European breed, and then we also have seen the Beefmaster, which is a cross of Hereford, Shorthorn, and Brahman. As we look into cattle, we want to make sure we're on the same page with some vocabulary words. The first one is this idea of type. A type is really the ideal in that standard of usefulness. What is the animal good at producing? We already talked about that we have some breeds that are dual purpose and some that are more milk oriented and some that are more meat oriented. When we talk cattle, we talk about skeletal size, and we refer to that as their frame size. It's usually measured by hip height. We oftentimes talk about cattle's disposition or our ability to handle them well. Are they calm? Are they easy to be around? And we sometimes then talk about early and late maturing breeds. This is typically referring to sexual maturity, meaning will the animal be ready to breed early in that timeline or later. We also refer to cattle as foragers. Foragers have the ability to eat grass in hard-to-reach places and turn it into high-quality protein. And so some breeds are excellent foragers. When we pick out a breed, we refer to also both their calving ease and their ruggedness. Calving ease talks about can the cow have a calf without assistance, while whether or not they're rugged refers to how well they range in different conditions. Sometimes we talk about the milking ability of cattle, and oftentimes we talk about whether the cattle are horned or polled. The word polled means that they are born without horns genetically. Let's start with the Angus breed. On your note catcher, you're going to make sure you write down a few key things like the origin and the characteristics and how they look. The Angus breed originated in Scotland, particularly Aberdeen, Scotland. They are black, almost always entirely black, but some have white on their bellies. They are usually always polled, and they have a smooth hair coat. Angus cattle typically have a medium frame size but are very heavily muscled, and it's that heavy muscling that has made them popular, so popular that they actually have their own brand in the grocery store called Certified Black Angus Beef, and so that originally came from kind of touting the superior quality characteristics. Now it actually is more of just a higher quality beef and very much so a marketing characteristic. Next, we can talk about the Hereford breed. The Hereford breed originated in a place called Herefordshire, England, and it is well known for its good disposition. They're typically calm and easy to handle. They're also very hardy, which is why they have that thicker curly hair coat. They're well accustomed to cold temperatures. They're typically a light red or cherry red color with that white going from the face down in under the belly to the tip of the tail. While they're a medium frame-sized animal, they typically have more medium muscling than heavy muscling. So it's pretty common for then breeders to breed a Hereford to an Angus, and that's where we come up with a black baldy calf, which might have the black where the red is in this picture, but still have the white markings on the face. All of these two breeds, Angus Hereford and those crosses, are pretty common here in the area we live in. We also want to look at the Brahman breed. The Brahman breed originated in southwestern United States after some zebu animals were imported from India in 1854. They characteristically can be any color. They range from light gray to red, almost black, and always have that hump over their shoulders and the dewlap under the throat. They have high heat tolerance. They're resistant to diseases and insects due to that zebu breeding, and are typically pretty heavy muscled and good foragers. Now, they are well known for having an unpredictable disposition, and so that's why you oftentimes see a Brahman breed used for rodeo bulls. They actually sometimes will isolate those genetic or those disposition traits like being unpredictable and being able to buck well and breed them for those. Next, we have the Simmental. The Simmental originated in Switzerland. It's a really old breed. It came from the Middle Age type generation. They're typically light or darker red with that white area around the face, but also kind of some spotted areas on the body. They're docile, but they're very large-bodied animals. So they're a more rapid-growing animal, very thickly muscled and adaptable in many climates. Now, while a Simmental is a larger-bodied animal, it's not without its downfalls in that large body, because oftentimes it will take longer to finish those calves because they grow to be bigger. So they have more days on feed, but they also produce more meat, and so that has to be something the producer is looking for. And then we have the Maine Anjou breed. The Maine Anjou breed came from northwest France. They're deep red in color, they have white markings, but they also sometimes are solid black or partially black. They also are heavily muscled and have a large frame size. So we see in our area some breeders who like to cross Maine Anjou or Simmental with other breeds like Angus to bring up the size of that carcass a little bit more and still keep the high quality from the Angus side. Now, these listed on the screen are just a few of the other breeds. There's actually close to 200 cattle breeds, and so it's important for us to remember that there are as many breeds as there are different cattle producers. Every breed should be matched to the area that those cattle are being grown, and that so they can have the right attributes to be successful. One of the things that we want to make sure people begin to understand is something called hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor is when we cross two breeds together and the offspring outproduce both parents for some trait or some combination of trait as well. An example that I mentioned earlier is crossing Angus and Herefords to get a black baldy calf. The people who produce those believe that that niche of calf is better performing or a better combination than both of the parent breeds, and that's where that crossbreeding comes from. So when we talk about the ways that the offspring outperform the parents in a cross, we term that hybrid vigor. Happy studying!